Welcome to Prospects to Pros, where we talk about the guys who are about to get drafted, the guys who just got drafted, and everything in between. And we have a lot to talk about. I'm Andy Staples. He's Dane Brugler. The national championship game is over. The college football season is done. All-star game season is upon us. And also, we know the draft order, at least some of it, most of it in the NFL right now. Dane, let's start with the championship game. Georgia and TCU. We said we thought Georgia had a significant talent advantage. It was overwhelmingly significant. Jalen Carter is still good, it turns out.
Yeah, imagine that. And I want to say something nice about TCU. I'm just trying to come up with it. But I do think that Steve Avila, the left guard, who has a chance to be a top 100 pick, I thought he played well, considering the competition. But yeah, this was a Georgia game, and credit to Stetson Bennett and that offense for removing the football like they did. The defense showed up. I think that most of us thought it would be a Georgia type of because they played catch up the entire game against Ohio State.
Yeah,
we had a feeling that they weren't going to let that happen. They were going to jump out to a lead, and then they were just going to pull away as the game went on. We just didn't think they'd pull away in the first quarter. Like they did, but credit to that offense, that staff. Stetson Bennett, we've talked about it, not a ton, but we've mentioned it. How Stetson Bennett is a guy that needs to be considered a legitimate prospect, has a chance to be drafted, and look, he has started 4 playoff games. Yes. He has been the MVP of 4 playoff games. That's a remarkable stat right there. I mean, and that will not go unnoticed by NFL teams because and obviously he's playing with an all-star cast around him, but you still need to play at a high level to win those games and win the MVP like he has. So, and he did it in this game where it showed off his legs, showed the composure, the awareness, understand everything going on around him. He's there. Really the main thing working against him, he's small, just like Bryce Young. He's right around 5'11", 190 pounds. He's also older than a lot of current NFL quarterbacks. He's going to be 26 in October, I believe. So how every team will look at that a little bit differently. I don't think it's as big of a deal just because we're talking about a backup quarterback who you're going to draft in the later rounds. So I don't think the age is as much of a factor. But for him to go out like he did, pretty impressive. Yeah.
And so this conversation has been going on for a while in college circles about what Stetson Bennett's football future is. And I remember the drunk interview with Michael Strahan on Good Morning America after the national title game last year, where he said, I'm an economics major. I'd like to go to law school. Well, his attitude on this has changed. We talked to him before the Peach Bowl, and he said, my football career, if it's going to end early, it's because somebody cut my leg off. He said, I'm going to keep playing as long as somebody let me play. And I talked to Todd Monken about him. Monken's Georgia's offensive coordinator, and obviously he is a big fan of Stetson Bennett's, but he also was the Bucs offensive coordinator, early Jameis era Bucs, and then worked with the Browns before he came to Georgia. So he's been around some NFL quarterbacks and understands how that system works. What he said about Stetson and why he thinks Stetson could be a long-time NFL backup is Stetson can perform without reps. And that's the thing that's actually how Stetson got the job. In 2020, they thought Jamie Newman was going to be the quarterback, the Wake Forest transfer. He opts out during camp, and they're like, oh, crap, what are we going to do? And so the next step is DeJuan Mathis, who's a scholarship guy. They brought him in after Justin Fields transferred. And they're like, okay, it's your job. Well, DeJuan Mathis goes out against Arkansas, and they can't do squat. They can't move the ball at all. Stetson Bennett, who's not really been taking reps at all, comes in. All of a sudden, the offense works. That's how he got the job. But they still wouldn't give him the job. And so he was in competition for it. He lost it again to JT Daniels at the end of he got hurt in the Florida game in 2020. JT Daniels comes in. JT Daniels is the guy for the entire offseason before the 2021 season. Stetson Bennett not getting reps. JT Daniels gets hurt. They do a legitimate quarterback competition week 2 of 2021, which doesn't happen ever. where there's 50-50 reps with the first team, Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett. Bennett wins the job, starts against UAB, has like a ridiculous stat line, like 10 of 12, 288, 5 touchdowns. And that was that. The rest is history. But as Monken says, he's the type of guy, Chase Daniel, he mentioned Jim Sorge back in the day, who they don't need reps. You just show them what they need to do. They'll know how to do it. They'll do the work in their spare time to make sure they have it down. And if you need them to come into a game, they can perform. And that's what Stetson Bennett's going to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this is a guy that walked on, redshirted, went to junior college, returned to Georgia, was put on scholarship, and never really cried about it and pouted. He just worked. He just competed. And this is a guy that basically played 2.5 seasons for Georgia, and he finishes top 5 in school history in completions, passing yards, touchdown passes. So more than just being a game manager out there, he was putting up points. He was a guy that moved the offense. And so, that's really interesting. And so when you look at it, this quarterback class, I'm a little surprised he has not. I do not know this for a fact, but I'm guessing he has a Senior Bowl invite. If it has not been announced yet, he has not accepted it yet. But this is a guy that when you look at his career starts, he's 29-3, and anybody listening to this podcast might tell you, well, a quarterback wins is not a stat, and you're welcome to think that. But you know what? A lot of NFL teams think it is a stat, and so going 29-3 in your career as an SEC quarterback, that matters. And so the guy's a winner. He goes out there and it helps his team win, and that's something that you want in your quarterback room. And so I think a lot of teams will be interested in those later rounds.
Yeah, and the thing about Stetson, you can say, oh, he had an overwhelming talent advantage in most games, and that's completely true.
Mm-hmm.
But he played really well in the games where they didn't have an overwhelming talent advantage as well. So, I'm very interested to see where he goes, what he winds up doing. I mean, really, a lot of that is situational. Do you wind up in the right situation for you, a place where maybe they've got an established young starting quarterback who's going to be there a while, and you can just be that guy behind him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even if you're the third string to start and you're a guy that's on the practice squad or a guy that, teams are going to put at the bottom of the rosters because they don't want to lose them because you're so valuable with what you bring to the quarterback room in terms of practice, in terms of the meetings, and having that extra voice in there. That matters a ton in terms of preparation and executing the game plan. So it's almost like being a part coach, part coordinator, or part quarterback. He can feel that.
Trying to figure out who he matches stylistically, because like Trace McSorley's value is that he's a great backup if your starter's Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Because he can come in and run your offense.
Who was the quarterback before McSorley at Penn State?
Oh, gosh.
McGloin, right?
Yes, Matt McGloin. That's
right. That's a guy I never thought would have a chance at the NFL, and he went in and played for a couple of years. And I think Stetson Bennett is better than McGloin was at Penn State. Yeah. But the intangible factor, the intelligence factor, that really helped ascend him. And quarterback, we talk so much about the physical traits. Quarterback it's a mentality. It's something that, is more than just how far can you throw the football? How big are you? And so with what you bring to the equation with your mind, that's a big factor.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see where he goes. He's been fun to watch. He's also very smart and understands kind of the business of all this. You go back again. I keep bringing up the drunk interview. One, because it was amazing that he was on Good Morning America just hammered. And two, because he was so lucid on Good Morning America while hammered in ways I could never be sober. Yeah. And one of the things he said, and this was after he'd won the national title, they'd beaten Alabama the night before, is I'm going to play college football next year. I don't know where. I got to see if I can trust this coaching staff. Like, he put Georgia's staff on blast because they kept trying to recruit over him and essentially made sure he was going to be the starting quarterback before he made any further decisions. It was
and
incredible.
he's been down this road before, right? I mean,
Yeah.
his dad was a walk-on quarterback at
Yeah.
Georgia Southern. Like, I mean, when he was fighting to get recruited, he
Hmm.
flew across the country, going to every single camp, the Elite 11.
Yeah.
That's how he got the mailman
Right.
nickname, because he wore a U.S. Postal Service hat as a way to just stand out. And
Yeah.
so he gets this mailman, so he's used to being
Yeah. Market yourself. Yeah.
right, thought of less, and okay, how am I going to stand out? And so I have no doubt that he's going to be able to do that, at the next level as well.
Let's talk about a little further up in the draft. In fact, the top of the draft, because we know what the draft order is going to be for the top 18 picks now.
Mhm.
And what a finish in the Texans Colts game. Davis Mills, man, fighting for his
Unreal.
jobs. Like, hey, I ain't going out like this. And
Yeah.
I was that a Lovie Smith middle finger to the
Oh,
organization, knowing he's going to get fired?
100%. 100%. This is
That's
my parting
tremendous.
gift to you. You're going to keep paying me for the next 3-4 years, and I'm going to make sure you do not get that number one pick. Selfishly, I kind of wanted to see Houston get it, just because it'd make mock drafts a lot easier. Now you got to figure out, okay, Bears, they have the number one pick. What's going to happen with that number one pick? It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. And I think it will be a process. This isn't going to be, a trade's not happening next week. This is something that, the next 3 months we'll be talking about. So it's now with the Bears now picking number one, and you're Ryan Poles, the second-year general manager. You've got over $125 million in cap space, which is almost double what the next highest team has. So you've got money to spend. You've got, I think, 8 total draft picks. Now, you wish you had that 32nd pick, that first pick in the second round. But you traded that for Chase Claypool, which maybe you don't do again. But you've got the number one pick now, and the phone lines are open. It's a really fascinating conversation about, okay, do you stick and pick and take one of these defensive guys? Do you just trade to the highest bidder? Or do you even consider a quarterback? It's something where, if you're the general manager, every single option should be on the table. You examine each one and you figure out, okay, long term, what is the best decision for us? And it'll be really fun to talk. It's great for draft content, that's for sure.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. So, of the teams beneath the Bears that need a quarterback, obviously the Texans. And if the Bears stick with that pick, they're not going to take a quarterback. The Texans will be able to choose the quarterback they want. But you have the Colts. At 4. You have the Seahawks at 5.
Yep.
Because that's Denver's pick,
right,
in the Russell Wilson trade. You have the Raiders at 7. You have Atlanta at 8. That's a lot of people who could trade up for that number one pick.
Carolina at 9.
Yeah.
And I'd even include Detroit at 6 in there. I think
Goff may have another year or two, and you draft for the future.
Goff has been fine, but yeah, I think he this year was probably peak Goff, and you didn't make the playoffs. So it's like, okay, maybe this is the year we go for a younger guy and he can play behind, and so Detroit has 2 first-round picks, 6 and 18. So they have the draft capital to go make a move if that's what they want to do. But I think it's interesting for Chicago at 1, because you have the chance to draft whoever you want. And so Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, who we think are the top 2 defensive players, maybe even the top 2 players overall in this draft. If you're the Bears, I think you're almost hoping that the Colts call you at number 4, because you still want to stay within range of those 2 players. And I think it depends. If you the more I watch these guys, I think there's a pretty big drop off from Will Anderson, Jalen Carter to that next tier of players. And so I think there's some good players, but I think it's a drop off. And so if you're the Bears and you really don't want to trade away from those 2 guys, maybe you don't take the best offer, just sitting there at number one. Maybe you take what the Colts are going to give you because you want to stay within striking distance of one of those two guys, and you don't want to lose them. So it's a really interesting situation that it's not as simple as, okay, well, what's the best trade offer going to be? I think there's a lot of factors that go into this.
Well, that's the thing, and you're going to get something from the Colts if that's the scenario, and you're still going to get what you want from this first pick. Because let's say the Colts did trade with the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine the Colts are going to have to give the Bears quite a bit to do that, even if it's not the best deal. So you're going to get more picks, which then you can turn into other picks or just pick people, depending on how you feel. You go down to 4.
Yep.
The Colts are going to take whatever QB they want, Stroud or Young. The Texans will take the other one.
Most likely.
The Cardinals are going to take one of Anderson or Carter.
Right.
And then you get the other one.
Yeah.
You can't really lose there.
Yeah. I mean, we're assuming Houston takes a quarter. Houston's just such a wild card. You just don't know with the head coach. But I think that if we had to put a percentage on it, I think the best odds would say that they would draft a quarterback there. I mean, you've punted on the head coach now the last few years. You've punted on your quarterback the last few years. At some point, you've got to take a swing. I mean, Nick Caserio, he's not promised another year. You know, if you're Nick Caserio, you got to take a swing at some point. So, yeah, I think that the best odds would say Houston's taking a quarterback there at number 2. And so, yeah, I think that would be the best outcome if you're the Bears. And it might not be your best offer. You might get more ammo, draft ammo from, say the Raiders at 7 or, the Panthers at 9, whoever it ends up may be. But you know what? A chance to stay within range of one of those 2 studs on the defense, that matters in the equation.
Yeah, it's just going to be fascinating. And if you're the Bears, you're in a good spot. Polls said basically that Fields is their guy.
Yeah, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury said that about Josh Rosen.
Josh Rosen, that's true.
He literally said, "Josh is our guy." So, I mean, like, if you had to put a percentage chance on what the Bears are going to do, I'm not putting it at 100% the trade. I would put it at very high, at probably like 90% that this is going to be a trade. But I think that you have to leave a little bit of that pie chart for the chance that maybe they just don't get. Maybe the Colts aren't interested in moving up. Maybe they say, you know what, we feel good about Will Levis. We feel good about so we're going to stay pick at 4, keep our draft picks, and we're still going to get a quarterback we like. And maybe the Bears don't want to move down to 9 with the Panthers or whoever. Maybe it's just they don't want to move down that far because they're not getting the offer. So maybe they stay put at number 1 and they take Will Anderson. So there's at least a chance that happens in this. And then I would leave at least the littlest chance that maybe they look at quarterback. But obviously the number 1, the best odds of what's going to happen at number 1 is a trade back for a team looking to go up and get that quarterback.
Well, okay. So you talk about it. It's little odds, but
yeah.
Would you take Justin Fields over every quarterback available in this draft? Because I think I would.
It's really tough. I can't fully answer that without like going back and really studying what he did this year. I just watching the Bears on TV, he's still very much a work in progress as a passer. I mean, what he does with his athleticism and his legs is special. And then it seems like every game he had, 3, 4, 5 throws that were just like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Like he's showing progress.
It's also hard to tell because they started tanking.
That 100%. That's part of this, the offensive line. Played a lot of young guys. Braxton Jones looks like he might be part of the future there. But who he's throwing to, and the supporting cast was not equipped to help him, but he still did show progress, and that's very promising. And so I can't say with conviction that I would clearly take him over any quarterback in this class, and mostly that's just because I think Bryce Young is special. And there's so much about Bryce Young that I'm willing to bet on. But I also think that if you're the Bears, I don't know that with considering who you have in your building and all that you want to necessarily move on from Fields. But Ryan Poles did not draft him. That's part of this as well.
Right.
And then there's also a smaller section of this conversation about this has never been done before, but do you put any, I'd be interested to get your thoughts, any stock in the notion of drafting a quarterback and having a true competition? Because like we've never seen it at quarterback, but we've seen it at other positions where
Yeah.
you're loaded at receiver, and hey, just let's keep it strengthening our strength. Let's get better. Let's create competition. The most important position in all of sports. Let's draft another really good one. Let these guys compete, and cream rises to the top. We'll figure out who the best one is. That's our guy moving forward. And then the guy that doesn't win the job, he's still going to have value out there, and we can make it. So it's crazy. It's never happened before, so I sound crazy right now even talking about it. I realize that
Happens in college all the time. Take as many 5 stars as you can.
Exactly. So I don't think it's as crazy as some people are thinking it is listening to me talk right now, but it's at least something I want to throw out there as something. If you're Ryan Poles, you at least discuss it. You at least have it on the table because every option should be examined.
So here's where I am with that, because I understand what you're saying. And again, this happens in college at the top level schools every year. Ohio State has 2 or 3 5 stars that will compete in spring practice for the job. Georgia has 4 and 5 star guys who all got beaten out by Stetson Bennett, and they will now compete for the job. So I understand where you're coming from here. And let's say they draft Bryce Young, because I'm with you. I think he's the potentially special one in this draft. So if Bryce Young beats out Justin Fields, I do think there would be enough teams in the league that would go, Justin Fields is an upgrade over who we have. We will trade you significant capital for that. We'll trade you, picks, players, whatever you want for that. If Fields is better than Young, though, then the other teams are like, well, we don't know what he is. We know he just got beat out. And then I don't know what your value is. Are you going to get enough value out of that to justify missing or skipping Will Anderson or Jalen Carter at that point?
I think it comes down to what you think of Young. Like if you really think that he is special, and that part of this is being you're kind of hedging your bet with Fields. We're not in that Chicago Bears building every day, so we don't know, how he is in meetings and how his progress is from a game plan standpoint, from a playbook standpoint. So that's part of, that's missing from, what we're talking about here. But if you're not 100% sold on Fields, regardless of what Ryan Poles has said in the media, then, I think that helps your chances of doing something like that. But, it's at least something that I think the Bears should look at. It's not something that I said they should do, but it's at least something that, you just don't have this opportunity very often where you have a chance to bring in, you almost look at these guys as assets, as, this is a big time asset I'm adding to my team, and he will make more of an impact than no matter who else I could draft here. And I still think Bryce Young would command a significant, trade package, even if Fields does beat him out at some point and Fields is your guy moving forward. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of interesting developments, this is the period where we get more draft declarations from guys whose seasons just ended. Paris Johnson Jr., the Ohio State offensive tackle, who you think will be the first offensive tackle off the board, he's officially declared. Jalen Carter has officially declared. No surprises there. But there was one big surprise over the weekend, and it's a guy who did not declare. Jared Verse, the Florida State edge rusher who had transferred from Albany, who was on the Jermaine Johnson plan, did not declare. He is going back to Florida State. That's a big one, because usually you don't see somebody who is a potential top 20 pick come back.
Especially, he's a 4th-year guy, so it's not like he's 20 years old and just still very young and, wants more life experience before he becomes a pro. He's an older guy. He's going to be a 5th-year senior next year, but only 1 year at the FBS level. It just sounds like he really enjoys being at Florida State, and I have no doubt that NIL plays a factor in this. and NIL it changes things now. We've seen more top 100 picks go back than past years. Every year we see guys go back and make these decisions, but NIL is making it more and more common because it's okay. I could be a third round pick, or I'm going to get 750K from Clemson for me to stay. I'll do that. I'm having a good time here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be competing for a job with a 35-year-old. Like, let's just let's slow down a little bit. I'm still going to be making good money. I can help my family out. So, and with Jared Verse, I don't know how much he's making, but I'm sure he's making a good amount of money. And you know what? He's got a chance to get better too. He's a guy that has a ton of talent. I think he plays the right position, and he has the talent that you feel like he's going to get better and better. So there's no doubt in my mind he was going top 20 in this draft. But going back, maybe it could help him in the long run. It's certainly possible.
So I talked to Adam Fuller, the defensive coordinator, over the weekend, and he said that one thing with Jared is he felt like, and this is Jared talking to his coach, saying, I think there are things I can do a lot better, that I can clean up, that I was pretty raw this year, and that I can be a more polished product coming out next year, which if you can go from a top 15 pick to a top 5 pick, then suddenly financially that's worth it too. Look, there's NIL money in this, and Florida State's NIL philosophy, I think, is a good one because they are much more interested in making sure their best players on the roster get taken care of than going too far into front in NIL deals for recruits who they don't know if they're going to be any good or not. Like Florida State has said, you guys go spend all this money on recruits that may or may not pan out. We are going to do it with our best players now, or people in the transfer portal who we've evaluated very carefully and understand how they fit at this level.
That's common sense.
Yeah. Which is how they've improved that team, because that team was in bad shape a couple of years ago. Yeah. They are much better now than they were.
Are they going to be the ACC favorites next year? I mean, they've got a lot of guys coming back.
I think Clemson still will be the favorite, but Florida State will be the trendy pick. They will be the trendy pick to win the ACC. The end of ACC divisions this year. So Florida State doesn't necessarily have to beat Clemson to get to the ACC title game. They play 3 set opponents every year, and then the rest of the schedule rotates through, and then they just take the top 2 teams in the title game. So that's big for Florida State. That's big for Louisville, which is going to have really good talent under Jeff Brom. Like, he's going to be able to bring in quite a few good players. And so that'll make it interesting. But Verse coming back is huge for them. One other guy coming back, Dane, that really shocked me, mostly for positional reasons, not for sentimental reasons or anything like that. Blake Corum, the running back, coming back to Michigan, because my feeling on running backs is go start your clock. Like, I don't care how good a time you're having in college, go start your clock.
Especially coming from that Michigan offense where they're just going to grind you out and get every carry possible in that Jim Harbaugh offense. I was talking to someone last week, and he was saying how Michigan was passing the hat around to basically, okay, how much NIL money can we raise here to keep them? And that's definitely a part of it. Another part of this is the injury. Not being able to work out before the draft, which seemed like that was a possibility for Blake as he's kind of rehabbing his knee injury. That's something that probably played a factor. Based off of tape, he's a top 75 pick in this draft. But this is a loaded running back class, and if you're not able to work out during the process, that might knock you down a little bit. And so I think that at least played a factor in his decision to come back.
Yeah, I do too. I
agree. I agree with you. Yeah.
If you're not going to be a first round pick, that means your clock starts even early. That means you've got 4 years till the next contract instead of 5. Like, as a running back, the only goal should be to get to the second contract.
Yeah, I do think that's fair. And again, with that Michigan offense, now they do have Donovan Edwards coming back, so it'll be Michigan. They have the best backfield in college football. I have to, right, with JJ McCarthy, and then there's 2 running backs. I mean, that's Good luck. So I mean, it's big for Michigan. That offense is going to be humming next year. But yeah, I agree with you. It's especially at that position, it's something where you want to maximize your ability, your shelf life, and there'll be no doubt he'll go into next year as the top senior running back prospect among the senior class. We see him this year with Zach Charbonnet, who could have came out last year, would have been third, fourth round pick. He comes back to school. I don't know that he's improved his stock really at all. I think he's the same guy. Was still going to be probably a day 2 pick. But it's interesting with NIL and how much if NIL is not a factor, Blake Corum's probably in this draft class.
Yeah, and it's interesting how this works because it is a factor in all of these. Michael Penix, it's a factor.
Mm-hmm.
Several of the Bo Nix coming back. Several of the quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler. Before Spencer Rattler announced that he was coming back to South Carolina on Tuesday, several days earlier, he was tweeting about, "Hey guys, support the South Carolina collective." Basically, like, "Hey, give the money that they are going to then give me."
Exactly.
But like the Jared Verse thing is interesting to me because there's no amount of NIL money that FSU collective could come up with that's going to match what he would have made his first year in the NFL.
Right.
Part of it is, and just from talking to the guys on that staff and watching that team, those guys actually seem to really like playing together.
Yeah.
Which I think is an underrated factor. And you were talking about that earlier. Like, sometimes guys just like being in college. They like the environment, or they like the people they're playing with, or the people they're playing for. And they're like, you know what? I may not make as much money coming back as I'm going to make if I go pro, but I'm going to make a good amount. That changes the math on that quite a bit.
There are so many factors why guys will go pro or come back to school. Like, I mean, some guys just they're not mature enough to go to the NFL yet in terms of just their mentality. And, if they're having fun with their teammates and, there are so many factors that go into this. And for a lot of these guys in the past, the motivating factor was just money and if you're making $750,000 from NIL, all of a sudden that, yes, you could make maybe a little bit more in the NFL. And, if your number one goal is to maximize every cent, then probably go. That's probably the best, your best odds of doing that. But for a lot of these guys, they're not thinking about, I need to maximize every single cent. It's about, okay, can I make a living right now? And do I still feel, good about what my future is going to be? Then they're willing to take that chance. So, Twitter and, they get on these guys and they decide to go back to school. But I think there's just a lot of factors that go into this. It's more than just the financial. And, where we are right now, and this might change by the time you're listening to this, we're still waiting on a few key underclassmen to declare. The deadline's on Monday. CJ Stroud, Ohio State quarterback, obviously has not yet, as of this recording, officially declared. We expect him to. It'd be a shock if he did not. And a big reason why 4/5 of his offensive line look like they're gone with Paris Johnson, who you mentioned, Luke Whippler, the center, declared. I do think Whippler makes the center class better, although I wasn't blown away with him as a prospect. He's more of a mid-round guy than a top 100 guy. And so I have yet to watch a center this year that I feel very confident will be a top 100 pick. Now, maybe there's a team that really needs a center and they end up taking one top 100, but there's not a single center in this draft that screams, oh, I'm definitely a day 2 pick. And, Whippler is part of that. A couple of Georgia players, you mentioned Jalen Carter announced him and Keely Ringo right after the national championship game. They said they were going pro. A couple other guys we have yet to hear from, Broderick Jones, who is most likely gone, the left tackle. He'll be one of the first tackles drafted. Darnell Washington is a little more interesting because he's coming off the injury, and just, tight ends are a little different, but I still think he's going to declare. He should be part of this draft class.
I don't think he wants to compete with Brock Bowers in the draft class.
Yeah, that's true. Quentin Johnston also played the national championship game, TCU wide receiver. We have yet to hear from him. He has a chance to be one of the first wide receivers. Technically, Jordan Addison hasn't declared yet, but that's done. He's already going to be in this draft. Tommy Eichenberg, another Ohio State underclassman, has yet to make a decision. He is very well liked. He has a chance to be a day 2 linebacker if he comes out. Our Kansas State defensive end, I'm not very good at pronouncing his
Felix
name.
Enrique Uzama.
Perfect. He sounds like he's really on the fence about
Yeah.
what he's going to do. He's a talented player, but he's still young. Could get better by going back. He's not a top 60, top 70 lock. So if he does go back to school, he has a chance to make some money. So that one, I certainly understand why he would be 50-50.
Yeah. I think that would be, that would be interesting if Verse and Enrique Uzama both came back to school, because that does change the edge class a little bit. But man, it is going to be a fascinating next few weeks. The All-Star games are upon us. Shrine game coaches have been announced. It's the Falcons and the Patriots.
Yeah, that's interesting. Usually, it's you start at the draft order. All the years it's the coaching staffs have been at the Senior Bowl. You start at the top of the draft order, and where there was a coaching staff that was in place for longer than a full season, that's usually who went and coached the Senior Bowl. This year, we had to go way down the list. So a lot of coaches are getting passed over for these two, and it's just interesting that Bill Belichick going. So that adds another wrinkle to that Shrine game activity. So that'd be a lot of fun.
Well, and I kind of wonder, because the scuttlebutt in college football is that maybe Bill O'Brien will leave Alabama as the OC. Well, the scuttlebutt in college football is that Bill O'Brien is going to leave Alabama as the OC and wind up back in the NFL. The question is where. The obvious spot everyone was thinking is the Patriots, because he's worked there before. And Pat Patricia is not an offensive coordinator, as we saw this year, and Bill O'Brien very much is one. So I'm curious to see what the staff looks like when they get there.
Yeah, that's good. And Gerard Mayo is very well liked in that
Could be a DC somewhere else. Yeah.
Yep. He has a very good chance to land somewhere else. And so 100%. That'll be interesting. And the Patriots are coming off a season where it seemed like it was doomed from the start. With the coaching staff was, there were a lot of questions there. Weren't sure what the offense was going to look like. And the defense can only be so good. So next year, this will be a much different looking Patriots team with some older guys moving on. And, they need to do something with that offense in terms of getting more playmakers in there, especially at the wide receiver position. So, maybe that it'll start at the Shrine practices where, A.T. Perry, Zay Flowers are supposed to do. Zay Flowers, he's a Boston College guy. Yep. Maybe just keep him up there in the Northeast. That would make some sense for New England.
Well, I'm sure they've had their eye on Zay Flowers for a while.
Oh yeah,
but A.T. Perry's another good one from Wake Forest. He's one I think that if you didn't watch a lot of Wake Forest, you're not very familiar with him, but he's a very productive receiver. And
he could be the first senior receiver drafted. It's possible. Yeah. I mean, Rashee Rice from SMU, A.T. Perry, Cedric Tillman, Zay Flowers. I mean, those four guys, I think probably the first senior receiver drafted comes out of that group of four. And A.T. Perry he's right there in the mix. He's 6'3.5", 205 pounds. Going to run well, probably in the high or the low 4.4s, 4.48 around there. Really long player, and that shows at the catch point. With that huge wingspan of his. So I'm a big A.T. Perry fan.
So we should have basically full rosters for these games by next week, Dane. Who has not declared for one of these All-Star games do you most want to see in one of those practices?
Well, we mentioned how Stetson Bennett. I just want to see him throw compared to
when the talent's equal.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to see what it looks like size-wise, the ball coming off his hand, that type of thing. So that would definitely be one of those guys. And honestly, I don't think Will Levis has officially turned down his invite yet. Maybe he did and I missed it, but he has not accepted, and I don't think he will. But I don't think he's officially said no, or at least it hasn't been reported yet that he said no. So that's just something to watch here as we get closer. I mean, most of the guys have already been announced. maybe the thing I'm most interested in is to see, because this happens every year. Guys drop out. The
Right.
roster, the guy, everyone that accepts, it looks great, and then a bunch of guys drop out. So this year, all right, Tyree Wilson, Texas Tech, has a chance to be a top 10 pick.
He's been hurt.
Coming off the injury, exactly. So what does he do? Does he does he feel up to it to play, or does he say, you know what, I'm just gonna back off a little bit, get ready, get my mind and body right for the combine? My guess is the latter, but hopefully I'm wrong. Rashee Rice, he skipped the bowl game because of his toe issue. Another thing where he might say, you know what, yeah, I could go, but I'm gonna just get myself back to 100% health, get ready for the combine, start that training. So those two guys really stand out as that type of decision where they have a chance to be first round picks, but might be those dropouts. So hopefully we don't see as many dropouts this year, but there's always going to be some.
Yeah, this will be a really interesting season, All-Star game season.
Let me ask you real quick. Back to the underclassmen. Have there been any underclassmen that have declared maybe that surprised you, where you thought, you know what, he really should have gone back?
No, I hadn't thought about that, but no. And
Okay.
NIL, I think, is the reason for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I did have a coach tell me something very interesting. That this is a head coach. He said, and he mentioned some players that he had that were lower round draft picks. And he said, when those players left, they had agents in their ear telling them that they could be first round draft picks when they were clearly like fifth round draft picks.
Right.
But the agents would lie to them. The new agent lie, instead of you'll be a first rounder, is you won't be drafted at all, even though you might be a fourth or a fifth rounder. And here's the reason why. Because the NIL deal commission is 10 to 20%. The contract commission for an agent is 4%.
Yeah. So is this a bad thing?
No, it's good for college football. Not the getting lied to part,
right?
But when players who would have been lower round draft picks or undrafted free agents that would have been signed to teams, when they come back, they have a much bigger impact on the college football team they're coming back to than the NFL team they would have been going to. Those people matter. Like I'll give you an example. Brett Bielema, when he was at Arkansas, complained about this because he lost his two guards off his offensive line. And they both went, I think one was like a seventh rounder, one was an undrafted player. And he's like, why can't those guys come back? Clearly they got bad information. Why can't they just come back? And the difference between having two veteran, like third-year starter guards versus having to go find somebody in the transfer portal or play a redshirt freshman is massive.
Oh, yeah.
Massive. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's what – and I used to talk – when Manny Diaz was the head coach at Miami, I talked about this because Miami was like the poster child of a team where guys would leave early to go be seventh-round picks. If they could just keep those guys, they'd be a little more veteran heavy. It might mean a game or two more wins on the back end.
Yeah.
And I feel like teams like that now are going to keep those guys.
Well, and it's funny you brought up Bielema because Kirby Joseph, the standout safety, he last year he told me what Bielema told him about when he told the coach that, hey, I think about coming out. He was a fourth-year guy, fourth-year senior, but he had the COVID year if you want to come back. And Bielema told him, like, hey, you're going to be a seventh rounder. Like, if you get drafted at all, come back, you'll get better. And I was like, dude, I mean, Kirby, you're like, the teams think you could go third round, fourth round, the latest. Like, it's you do what you want to do, but it is what it is. And so he came out and he was drafted third round. And he had a pretty good rookie year. So these coaches are put in a compromised position because they get burned.
See Bielema, but that's a bad idea. That's bad business.
It is
for Bielema. Like Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, those guys understand the value of the draft in recruiting. If you've got a player you think is a third rounder and you think coming back will not help him at all, in the draft, you tell him to go, because a 3rd round draft pick who becomes an NFL starter is good for your recruiting.
Yeah.
Like, if you
It
can't
is.
help him get better and get drafted higher, then tell him to go. If he's a 3rd round grade and you think he could be a 1st rounder, then by all means put the full court, show him the math of what being a 1st rounder could mean and how he could actually make more money that way. But yeah, the draft is your best recruiting tool as a college football coach, and not sure every college coach understands that.
That's a great point. Yeah, not every coach really embraces that, and I get it because they're looking at their numbers, they're looking at their own depth chart, and so I get it. But yeah, lean into it, and that's why why I'm just flummoxed. But when we see or I hear from some of my agent or scout friends about, hey, I went to this campus and they totally locked me out, or like they don't give me any access, they don't give me any information, and I'm like, this isn't like the media, this isn't like agents, this is scouts, like it's guys that want to, they want the information so they can help get your guys to the next level. Like, it just blows my mind.
It is completely mind blowing. Before I left Sports Illustrated, I did a story because Albert Breer had suggested this. He's like, he called me. He goes, why do the scouts love Alabama so much?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, because if you show up in Tuscaloosa at 4 a.m., someone is opening the complex for you, giving you whatever video you need, and making you coffee. Like,
Saban gets it.
Yeah, they want you to like their players.
Yeah.
And Clemson's like that. Georgia's like that. Ohio State's like that. They want you to like their players. They want you to take their players. But there are other schools that are complete lockdown mode. The coaches are paranoid. They think the scouts are going to call their alma mater's coach and be like, I saw them running this at practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's the dumbest thing you can do. The smartest thing you can do as a college football coach is help your players get drafted as high as possible, because that's all recruits care about. You can say they care about NIL, and they do to an extent, but like Alabama and Georgia don't have to pay as much on the front end because they can say, look how many 1st rounders we make.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was talking about this the other day with a scout about Ohio State. Like, you just look at, Nick Bosa is Defensive Player of the Year. Garrett Wilson's the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like,
100%.
I mean, it's just it's easy.
We will develop you, and we have a track record. And if you would like to call a Bosa brother or Chase Young or Garrett Wilson or Jeff Okuda or whoever, call them, and they'll tell you.
That's it. That's the best recruiting pitch you can make, there.
It's unbelievable. So, dear college coaches, don't treat scouts like dirt. Be nice to them. It might help your player get drafted like 3 spots higher. And trust me, that matters.
Yeah. Sooner or later, I think all coaches figure that out. It just might take them a few years before they really lean into it. So,
it's unbelievable. Well, Dane, it has been a pleasure. I'm on vacation for a little bit, but we will be back next week about a day late.
Yep.
Sorry, my fault.
With our latest, or with our co-host back with us, which will be fun.
That's right. Lance Zierlein coming back. He will be deep in the process of writing up prospects.
Yep. Next week, I've got a mock draft coming out. I've got my positional rankings coming out. So we'll have a lot to talk about, a lot to debate, and kind of, it'll be a set the stage type of podcast for the rest of the draft process.
I cannot wait. Just getting ready for the combine in Indianapolis, getting ready for our draft reporter combine, trying to get my bench press reps up. So my 40 time is going to suck, though. I'm warning you right now. So we will be ready, though. We will be prepared. Yeah, next week, big week. Cannot wait to see that mock draft. We'll talk to you later.